Community voice.
Hello, welcome to a Community Voice Short. I'm your host, Katie Roche, and I'm joined in the studio today by Officer Jory Bailey.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So today we're going to be discussing the new Curfew Ordinance. But first, let's talk a little bit about your role within the Iowa City Police Department. You have a very special role within the department.
I do. I have a position that didn't really exist within the last 7 years. My position is called Crime Prevention Officer. So what I do is I go out in the community, I work with the community to not only help educate, but build relationships between the police department and the community. I guess I would call myself not only crime prevention officer, but community liaison between the police department and the community.
So what does that look like? You go into a neighborhood and you introduce yourself around, and you're kind of the face of the department in some ways?
I get a lot of looks sometimes going into the neighborhood and neighborhood meetings, things like that. But yeah, I would call myself at times the face of the department. I do things that other officers might not have time to do, patrol officers in particular. Attending neighborhood meetings, community meetings, boards that would like police officers to sit on them. I usually fill that role.
Okay, all right. So the Curfew Ordinance, it just went into effect on March 1st, but it was passed in late December, and now it's actually being enforced. What is the Curfew Ordinance? How did it come about?
Well, the ordinance actually passed, or actually took effect December 23rd. It hasn't been enforced up until March 1st. It hasn't been specifically enforced, I should say. The ordinance, I think, came about by the City Council, obviously. You know, late last spring, early summer, we had incidences that involved juveniles throughout our city. And I think they kind of got the attention, those particular instances got the attention of the council, got the attention of citizens within our community who voiced their concerns to our city council. And I think that was what started the curfew, and then obviously it took the council's vote to get the curfew in effect. So
these were young people that were out later than
Sure.
maybe they should have been, getting into trouble without their parents necessarily monitoring them closely. And
right, you know, some of the incidences, I won't say all of them would have occurred or did occur after what the curfew parameters are. Some occurred beforehand, but they mostly involved young people, and specifically a group of young people committing a lot of the things that we heard about in the media, and you know, via rumors or word of mouth.
Okay, so yeah, I know teenagers, one probably doesn't get into too much trouble, but maybe a few getting together.
You know, you know, perception of teenagers, or perception in general is based, I like to tell people, is based off of what we hear and not always factual basis. And in this case, it was a lot of teenagers were taking the bad rap for the actions of a few.
Right. So the actual ordinance, what are the parameters of this curfew? Who does it affect?
Well, it affects juveniles, basically meaning under the age of 18. There's 3 parameters, 3 times set for 3 different age groups. Juveniles under the age of 13 or 13 years of younger are required to be in their house, not out in a public place, by 10 o'clock. So the 10 o'clock time is set for 13 and younger.
Okay.
The next step up would be juveniles 14 and 15, and they're required to be in and not out in public by 11 o'clock. The third time and the third age group would be juveniles 16 and 17, and they are required to be within their house or not out in public by midnight.
So when you say public, what is a public place?
Well, a public place can be as simple as an apartment hallway. If you live in an apartment complex, being in the hallway is a public place. A place that's accessible to members of the public, just like it sounds. That includes being in an automobile or being out in a car, being in a restaurant, any place where the general public can access.
Now, I imagine there's exceptions to this. So if you're with your parents and you're at a big family dinner and it's 11 o'clock at night and you're 13 years old, police aren't going to come in and say, all right, Johnny, you're in trouble.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. Johnny would have to be accompanied by an adult. a responsible adult, their parents, for instance, and that's one of the exceptions. There are several exceptions to the curfew, being accompanied by an adult, a responsible adult, a parent, for instance, is one of those exceptions.
What are some of the other exceptions?
The other exceptions are traveling between their house and their place of work,
okay.
Traveling between a school function and their home, traveling between a religious function or a community function and their home.
Or a political function.
Political function,
They're participating in the caucus, for example.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. That's a great example. And running emergency errands for their parents.
Okay.
So.
All right. Those all seem like pretty reasonable exceptions.
So.
Can you give examples of when and how the curfew would actually be used?